Instead of identifying as the defender, look at yourself as an attacker. This mindset shift feels a little weird. It even might sound a little weird as I say it to you, but it's crucial because it prepares you to be proactive rather than just reactive. Thanks for joining me on the Lead Church Security Podcast, where we dive deep into the strategies that keep our churches safe while maintaining a welcoming atmosphere. I'm your host, Preston Hocker, and I've been a staff pastor for 20 years, but I'm also one of two owners of a private security company. We specialize in private investigation and executive protection. My partner and I have been featured in PI Magazine more than 7 times, and we're on the cover in the summer of 2023. Lead Security is the product of combining two of my passions, ministry and security. Today, we're diving into a critical topic that unfortunately has become increasingly more relevant in our times. It's surviving a violent attack. Today, we're going to explore the run, hide, fight protocol, which is a strategy that's been endorsed by security experts and professionals really around the globe. So let's go ahead and get started. The first step in this run, hide, fight protocol is to run. When you're faced with an immediate threat, your primary goal should be to put as much distance between a possible threat and you. In order to do this, you have to know your environment. You have to know it well. This means you have to have a clear idea of all of the exits and not just the main ones. A lot of us have these evacuation plans that are posted on the inside of each classroom door, but a lot of those evacuation plans only have one line that shows you how to get out in case of a fire. But in a crisis, you might need a different way of escape. This doesn't have to take long. Just take a walk around your area and know where your exits are. In a crisis, your first step should always be to get yourself and those people that you are responsible for to a place of relative safety. That means kids volunteer. You have to be prepared to get your kids to safety. Security team, safety team, you need to have plans to get people, to help people get to safety in case of a violent encounter. If you don't already know, you need to ask yourself where your people can run to, or specifically where you are going to run to. See, a lot of us have evacuation plans, and those evacuation plans are sufficient for a fire emergency. What if you're responding to a violent attack? We have to know just because the violence started in the building, there are no rules that say it has to stay there. When choosing a place to evacuate to, choose one spot that will work for a fire emergency evacuation. Also consider a place that has other spots you can fall back to or run to. See, at my church, our kids' evacuation point is out back of our church, near some trees, and beside an apartment building that is adjacent to our parking lot. In the case of a violent attack, the trees give our kids places to hide, and there's an alley behind the apartments that give our kids places to run. The last part of this run step is to call 911. Don't call 911 before you get to your evacuation point. Call 911 once you get there and you have relative safety. Then once you get on the line with 911, give them as many details as possible, but make sure those details are facts. Don't guess, don't assume, because guessing and assuming can change the strategies that the police might be using to manage this attack. If running isn't a safe option, hiding is going to be your next best bet. The goal here is to make it as hard as possible for the attacker to find you. You're going to want to find the most secure location as possible and ensure you and your people are out of sight. If you're in a room, lock the door. If you can, barricade it with whatever heavy furniture is available. Turn the lights off and get silent. You're going to want your hiding place to be out of your attacker's view, but still give you options for movement if the situation changes. Because see, violent situations tend to be fluid, which means they're ever changing. If running and hiding are no longer options, we arrive at our last resort, fight. Fighting should be your last resort, used only if you are in direct contact with your attacker. We put ourselves at a deficit when we face violent encounters and choose to identify as the defender. The church tends to identify as defenders because we've been indoctrinated to believe that attackers are bad and bad is sin. So we have to use the least amount of force as possible to neutralize a threat. Well, the problem with that ideology is identifying as the defender and using the least amount of force as possible handicaps us and decreases our chances of surviving violent threats or violent encounters. Instead of identifying as the defender, look at yourself as an attacker. This mindset shift feels a little weird. It even might sound a little weird as I say it to you, but it's crucial because it prepares you to be proactive rather than just reactive. I've trained in various full contact martial arts for more than a dozen years, and I've been competing in combat sports on some level, even back from middle school. While some of the techniques that I've learned might give me an edge or an advantage in a fight, I've changed my mind when it comes to surviving violence. Tim Larkin, who authored a book titled When Violence is the Answer, says it best. He says, techniques get you killed, principles save your life. When we understand some simple principles about violence, we can turn our minds into the ultimate concealed carry. If you're forced into a violent encounter and have to fight, use these principles to survive. The first principle is to stay aware. 99 times out of 100, you should be able to avoid violence altogether. I'd say 99 times out of 100, you should be able to de-escalate an argument before it turns violent. I'd bet most violent encounters we experience are either due to us simply not paying attention to our environments or not paying attention to social cues that are telling us we shouldn't be in our environment anymore. 99 times out of 100, violence absolutely is not the answer. We can almost always get out, walk away. But if you find yourself in a situation where violence is the answer, it's going to be the only answer. If you find yourself in a violent situation, you have to commit to your actions. If you're stomping the knee, attempt to bend it backwards. If you're going to pull on somebody's ear, try to rip that thing off, baby. In the face of violence, real violence, we don't have time to be timid. You know, and a lot of us in the church view violence as sinful, and I'm talking about violence and I'm making people uncomfortable. But a lot of us feel like violence is sinful for some reason. I think we think it's sinful because from our perspective, criminals use violence and, well, criminals are sinful. And so, well, it only makes sense that violence is sinful, but that's a huge mistake. Violence is a tool, and it can't be any more sinful than a screwdriver or a hammer. Violence becomes sinful when it's used inappropriately to cause harm on innocent people or defenseless kids. If you're forced to face violence, use whatever you can as a weapon. And you might be thinking, I don't carry a weapon. I don't have a weapon. There are all kinds of things. Even while you're watching this video or listening to this podcast, look around you and see what are some things that you can use. See, chairs can be a weapon. I mean, a fire extinguisher can be a weapon. Even your cell phone, if used correctly, can cause blunt force trauma. If you have to fight, aim to injure the person that you're fighting. Here's some criteria for injuries. First, injuries are objective. It means anybody that looks at the person can clearly see without an argument, without a doctorate degree, that they are in fact injured. It doesn't take a diagnosis to identify a person as injured. Second, injuries are handicapping. That means you've done something to this person that restricts their ability to function. Their eyes aren't working right. Their legs aren't working right. They can't use their arm. Third, injuries are lasting. And this is the big difference between just being hurt or being injured. If you're hurt, you can walk it off. If you're injured, you're not going to be able to walk for a while. You know, it's essential to practice these protocols, these strategies in a controlled environment. You don't want to have to implement run, hide, fight for the very first time in a real violent encounter. We want to get some reps in before we do these things. If you're leading your safety or security team at your church, consider starting with some simple role-playing drills. And as you go on, as your people, your team are getting the hang of run, hide, fight, they're understanding when it's appropriate to run, hide, and fight. Start introducing some more complex scenarios to ensure that everyone knows what to do under different circumstances. Violent encounters tend to be fluid, which causes our security to have to be fluid. There's no way to train for every single scenario. However, if we train for enough scenarios, we can have a place to work from and not be completely caught off guard if the worst were to happen to us. Now, thank you so much for joining me today for our Run, Hide, Fight episode. I hope you never find yourself in a situation where you need to use this information. Stay safe, stay alert, keep your eyes open. As we say in the industry, keep your head on a swivel. And remember, your safety is in your hands. It's your responsibility. Before you go, if you found value in this podcast, take a moment to give it a like, give it a share. Maybe even share it to your pastor or your security director. If you're watching this on YouTube, smash the subscribe button and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of this content. Take care. We'll see you in the next video.